Okay.
Hi, everyone. It's Lindsey Baker with Action Hour. My guest threw me off a little bit, but I am here with big news for you. Do you know that the National Park Services at Point Reyes National Park has proposed to take down the fence? Now, we have been talking to Jack Gescheidt for several years about this and about his activism and the group he works with. But I want to show you this video and then we'll get into the whole story.
10 days ago, the National Park Service sent out a press release that shocked everyone in the fight over the Tule Elk Reserve at Tomales Point, announcing a proposed change to the general plan. Quote, the proposed action would include removal of the Tule Elk fence and temporary water systems installed during the most recent drought. It seems no one on either side saw this coming.
Sudden announcement blindsided all of us, delightfully so, that the Park Service were proposing finally removing this fence out of the blue. Had no idea that was coming. Hundreds of elk have died inside this so-called reserve.
I think it's shock. I mean, it's by taking the fence down, it pretty much predetermines that there won't be ranching in the park.
Both men acknowledge that removing the fence would have an impact on the ranches, but the activists think they have no business being there in the first place. The ranchers feel they're being demonized for operating farms that have existed for more than 150 years.
So thank you, Jack, for being here with me today. This is big news. Tell us what you think about this, Jack. Do you think the fence is coming down?
Thank you, Lindsay. Hi. Do you want the 30-second version or the 35-hour version? So,
how about the minute version or minute and a half version?
Okay. So I've been on this campaign for 3 years. Other people, activists and citizens have been on this thing for a decade or even decades in some cases. And actually, as was said in that broadcast, this caught us by surprise. We've been pushing and pushing in a lot of different ways, and we'll get into that. But the way they announce it is just all of a sudden there's a press release saying we propose taking down the fence. And we're like, immediately everyone's like, oh my God, this is great. Like, what does this mean? So we had a big discussion, and now it's been, 3 weeks later, and we have some idea, mostly a good idea of what it means. And it is good news. It's a first absolutely necessary step to remove the fence. And then there'll be other issues with the elk being given more of the park. They should have all of the park without, domesticated cattle operations in the way. But we're really happy about it. And it is, I think, and I will talk about that, the result of lots and lots of activists and activism and thousands of citizens, like the people watching today, weighing in about this issue and letting the media know, and ultimately the Park Service know, that this is not the way to run a national park. Shouldn't be given over to private cattle operations.
And we will be giving people the opportunity to do that. We'll be giving out information. But in order for people to know what is going on and how this all evolved, I just want to quickly go into your background a little bit and mention to people that you are a New York ad man, kind of like Mad Men kind of thing. So you have these skills that you brought along with you when you suddenly decided to become vegan, or just talk a little bit about that and how that segued into you taking on this cause. And then we're going to go further into the whole history and all that.
Sure. Well, like a lot of people, I was, an animal lover and hi to the nice cows in the field you drive by in Vermont on the Northeast coast where I was out of New York State. And I just didn't connect the dots. I, do that. Oh, sweet animals. And then you go get a burger or a steak, and not just, it's willful ignorance is what I would call it. I wasn't completely unaware, but I would get some notification from PETA or In Defense of Animals. I'm like, oh, it's very upsetting. I don't want to know about that. Don't show me those grisly pictures. Not knowing that by, going to Walbaum's back in New York and buying something at the deli, meat, which is an animal, I'm contributing to the brutality and the enslavement of animals. So it was the movie Cowspiracy in 2014, 2016, I think 2016, I forget now, that I first, I guess my leash, my chain was jerked, and I had to face the reality that from an environmentalist point of view, which is what I called myself back then, not animal rights per se, but an environmentalist, I didn't know the major reason for global deforestation was due to clearing forests, clearing land to raise cattle for human consumption. And when that final straw broke my back of resistance, then I could move into the ethics portion of it and really look at that more fully in a way that, the average person doesn't want to look at, and it's painful to look at, to see what we've done with animals. And then flash forward to the Tule Elk issue that came again years later in 2018, when I saw The Shame of Point Reyes, a 90-minute documentary by Skylar Thomas, an independent filmmaker. In 90 minutes, it brought me up to speed and again jerked my chain about Point Reyes National Seashore. And I had by then moved to California, was living in the Bay Area. I would go into the park pretty often, Point Reyes National Seashore, a national park unit, which we call the park. And I had no idea what was going on. The same thing. There's beautiful elk in there in different spots. You don't know what's going on. There's cows and, they're good local organic Garys, or at least that's what we're taught to believe. And then I saw that movie, The Shame of Point Reyes, which is on YouTube, and I recommend it for anybody who's interested. And it just opened my eyes, just changed everything. And then I got involved.
And this has been a struggle for you guys. You've been doing all sorts of different things to get attention, because let's talk about exactly what was happening. And now, because luckily there has been a lot of rain, apparently the elk are not in danger. But as we both know, I'm noticing outside the temperature, I have a very light dress on, it's getting warmer. And we know the direction the climate is going. So let's talk about the history and a little bit of the problem, how the elk were reintroduced here. Let's go through that rapidly, but talk about the overall problem and what has been happening.
As a New Yorker, I have to remind myself not to go too rapidly, as you remember. But
okay, yeah, don't go too rapidly.
So the elk were reintroduced to Point Reyes Seashore and Marin County in 1978. 10 elk were brought in, which was great. And ironically, that's the Park Service doing their job, which is, reintroducing wild animals to a national park unit. It's why the park unit was created, among other reasons. Not specifically for Tule Elk, but when they had the actually bright idea to bring in Tule Elk, it was like, great, that's what this parkland can be used for. And the issue, of course, was there were still beef and dairy ranches in the park. And that's why they put up a fence to create the northern reserve at the northernmost part of the park called Tomahawk Point Tule Elk Reserve. But that was in 1978. And since then, the climate has heated, as you referred to, and that is now what we call a drought-ravaged area. So we were lucky this past winter. Yes, it was wet, as you also mentioned, and it's been a cool spring, which is great and, terrific. But as you're indicating also, it's not going to last. And it's heating up today. It's going to be in the 80s here. I'm about 10 miles inland from the park, 15 miles inland. And eventually the heat's going to get its way out there, and the cattle ponds are full at the moment, like in that picture. But 2 years ago, that thing was almost completely dry. It looked like something out of Death Valley. You're really good with the pictures. Thank you, Lindsey. And that one. I mean, that's that same pond there. That's the same pond from two different angles on 2 different days. So that's the one we activists brought water to. We can get into the activism we did, but right. That's going to happen again. I mean, all the predictions are we're going to get heat again. So the elk shouldn't be fenced into an area anyway, is the major point. Drought notwithstanding, which makes it worse and creates an immediate threat to the elk. Why are elk, and there's the 8-foot tall fence, why are elk fenced inside a national park unit? What's with that? When you go to any other national park, there aren't fences up containing the wild animals in certain areas. And all of that is because of the ranching, which we'll get into. And yes. In short, they were paid money. They were supposed to leave. And then they lobbied. They have a lot of political muscle. They lobbied to stay. They've been lobbying ever since. And the elk have suffered. They've died by the hundreds because they're contained in an area where they can't roam naturally to find water during drought. And we come upon it's just heartbreaking. I'm involved in a separate lawsuit, which is another story. Because
we'll get into that a little bit later. We're going to go into the 2 lawsuits. But yeah, you're doing a great job of giving an overall picture, and it's pretty grisly. And I know those pictures were strong, folks, but I think it's important to see what was happening. And so let's talk a little bit about what are some of the ways. So just tell us a little bit. So what was the first thing you did? Like, you saw this happening. Obviously, your group reached out to National Park Services, and how did that all go? Can you get us through that, in the next little while?
Yeah, I think what started the more active activism was the drought. I mean, my God, it was a trifecta. There was a drought. There were wildfires out here in California two summers ago, and the pandemic, that little thing where you're supposed to wear a mask. And do you wear a mask outside? And what about the wildfire smoke and the danger? And there's not enough water for the elk, so the ground is parched. And for instance, in that picture, so I'm with my organization, the Tree Spirit Project, which I've been doing for 15 years, and it's advocacy for trees. And of course, trees, as I learned, tie in with the cattle industry, because that's why we deforest, as we said before. So I went to there was a call. I'm not sure who put out. Oh, that's right. It was Diana Oppenheim of 4 Elk who had organized. She was the first organizer that I met on this issue when I met Skylar Thomas of Shame of Point Reyes. They were working together already on this issue. And it was, wasn't my suggestion. It must have been Diana's to bring water to the elk. And that's when In Defense of Animals showed up as well. And that's where we met. And I ended up I'm doing consulting work for them as well now. It's wonderful to work with an animal rights organization. I've learned so much about animal rights, not just the environmental aspect. And of course, it's all of the above, as well as ethics and food health, although I'm pretty healthy. That's not my issue for eating. But I went to that first evening gathering and we snuck water in without permission to the elk in the park. What little we could do. I mean, it's, we could be criticized for making it a publicity stunt, but that's the purpose of any good activism, is to do something good and productive and also attention getting for a larger cause. And that was the first 7 water drops. Longer story.
Let me just show the clip of the water drop we have.
To just check in with you and tell you how it went. It went really, really well. The short story is we have 2 troughs filled to the brim out there, away from sight, no rangers in sight, no one knows we've come and gone.
So I know you did several of these, and the first one, talk a little bit about what you did. You literally carried it in on your backs, correct?
Yeah.
Out.
Here's a fun fact. How much does a 5-gallon, a water cooler, a 5-gallon jug of water, how much does that weigh? And if you're really macho, you can carry one over your shoulder. And if you're double secret macho, you can carry 2 of them. It's 8.3 pounds per gallon, 5 gallons. So it's over 40 pounds for each one of those little hard plastic containers. And we were hauling the water in with those things and then putting it into a metal what we call a cattle trough, a metal galvanized metal tank, and we put that in the dry pond, not doing any damage to vegetation. And the Park Service later, was complaining that we were, damaging the park, which is just, the comedy of it all, the ridiculousness of it all. Like you're fencing in elk and letting.
And they dumped the water, right? Correct?
And they dumped the water. Yes, they undid the good that we did. And I mean, welcome to the game. Of course, they do it because if they didn't do it, then that would encourage us, right, to do it again. But of course, their PR is, it's unnatural to, damage vegetation when they have 5,000 cattle on 28,000 acres just crapping over everything everywhere, desiccating the land, pulverizing the soil, drying it out, which is desiccation. And that's okay, that's historic.
Here's a picture of one of your campaigns, correct?
Yeah, that's a pretty rough picture, huh? That's the New York ad man in me saying, do something to get people's attention. You got Tule Elk with wire in his antlers. I think that photo is by Jim Coda. And as is the cows wandering into the streams in the park and pooping. And for those people who don't get it, cow manure, hey, that's a great thing you buy at the garden store and put in your garden. And as I say, 5 pounds of manure is one thing, but 5 million pounds is actually water pollution and soil contamination. And inside a national park, there shouldn't be commercial operations of any kind, cattle or otherwise.
This is running down into the into people's the reservoirs and things in the area and getting into the food sources, certainly into the sea life, which people do eat, correct?
Yeah, to be technically correct, because otherwise we'll, get attacked by some rancher somewhere watching this thing. Yeah, in Point Reyes National Seashore, which is westernmost Marin County. It's about a 90-mile stretch of coast north of San Francisco by about 20 miles. Then it goes up almost to Bodega Bay. Any huge amount of manure that the cows, specifically the cows put on the land, will during heavy rains in winter get washed into the waterways. Not all of it, but a lot of it, and enough of it to make a difference. So that was another whole round of activism that we did, which was to test the water, to test the groundwater in the streams, in the estuaries, in the Pacific Ocean. Well, we didn't test the Pacific Ocean. That's harder to do. But it all basically runs off the land into the waterways and into the Pacific Ocean, into beaches that people go at. And we found measurements like 300 times the allowable limits, health limits of what's called fecal indicator bacteria. There's a fun phrase. E. coli, which people know, fecal coliform, and enterococci, my favorite, because it's such a fun word. I feel like a Stephen Colbert routine. So those things were off the charts in the waterways that people had contact with in the park.
And the animals too, would the cows drink that same water, so you get a double whammy?
So cows, many cows have what's called Jonas disease, which is a wasting disease that cattle typically have from being confined and basically consuming their own manure, usually out of poop lagoons or cattle water ponds, which they, as you saw, they're pooping in their own water. It's not the poor cow's fault. The cows are just abused animals, but it's too many cows crammed together, which is what you do to make a profit by eating their milk and taking their milk. So
I just want to let me just jump in a second and invite Point Reyes National Park on it anytime. And we are not experts, and the testing you did was scientific, but we're not claiming any sort of statement of how polluted the water was in any way, and this does not reflect the opinion of UnChained TV. So I just have to throw that in there. And we are, and I did lead you down the path, but we do have to think about these things. And the reason I brought it up is because some people still kind of feel like, we don't need the elk, and maybe we can bring, if we brought them in before, reintroduce them, they'll perform miracles someday. We don't have to worry about it. I like to eat my meat. Before we go on with more, I want to hear about more of the campaigns and then what people can do to help. But talk about that for a moment. Then we'll talk about what people can do to help, because we want to get that out there.
Well, can I do it this way, Lindsey? What do you think of this? Because, it was where I was, let's say 3.5, 4 years ago. And for the 20 previous years, I'd drive into Point Reyes Seashore. I'd see rolling green hills of Marin, at least in the rainy season, which is half the year, and saw, the black and white Ben and Jerry's cows, as some people refer to them, and the sign said organic and prize winning. And I thought, well, I don't know, but there aren't a lot of cows that I can see, and they're out grazing on grass, and it's small and organic and local and grass fed. Isn't that great? So that's the impression I think many of the laymen still have. Forget about the consumption of the product, but just how it's made, whether it's healthy, whether it's good for the animals, whether they're treated well. So that's the misconception. Can I go on about that?
Sure.
So in Point Reyes specifically, let me reduce my comments to Point Reyes to keep it's a separate show about cattle overall, I suppose. But what people don't realize is the ranchers who say they're historic ranchers, which is a wonderful PR term. We're historic. We've been here for hundreds of years. Yes, that's true. You've been there since the mid-1850s. But you received millions of dollars, the equivalent of $350 million in today's dollars, from the federal government, which is taxpayers, to buy your land and have you transition out of the park. Generally in about 25 years, when the deal was made and the park was formed in 1962. Yeah. So by 1987, they were supposed to be out. So that's number one.
You can continue with that in a moment. We were going to get to that a little bit later. When we
sure.
But let's just put up there what people can do to help right now, because if we're 20 minutes in, some people cannot stay longer. So
sure.
Let's talk about where they can reach and do that, and then you can get back into it. Go ahead.
So simply put, get on a list so we can contact you when there is a specific action. We have a town hall coming up. I'm going to be answering people's questions. If you had questions, for instance, to this show and want to interact, and that's sponsored by In Defense of Animals. So idausa.org/elk, or if you just go to idausa, meaning there's an In Defense of Animals, the USA version. You go there and you can find it under campaigns, but it's /elk. And then my own Tree Spirit Project website is treespiritproject.com/elk also. So those are two places. And if you're interested in this issue, we'd love to have your email and we will notify you when there's things to do. There is an action coming up in the next month or two, which is to tell the Park Service, yes, good job, Park Service. Thank you so much for proposing finally removing the fence. We need public support. Thousands and thousands of people we're going to reach out to, all the organizations working on this, to get them to be, the Park Service to be overwhelmed with public response, saying, yes, good job, compliment them for something they're moving in the right direction finally, remove the fence, free the elk. Be a huge win for the elk. They won't be trapped in that reserve immediately. They won't be dying in the next drought, whether that's this summer or next.
Right. And these phone numbers will be available to you. Contact information will be available to you at the top of the post directly after the interview. Now back to the cattle ranchers and the rental property. I mean, that they were renting it and were given money to move off gracefully. What they are saying now, that when this happens, if this were to happen, when you say take down the fence, that it's going to end their business. And you saw it in the CBS clip, the man stated that.
So that's Albert Strauss. I've met Albert. He's a good guy. I mean, he's my age, a year or two older, and it's third generation. And, I've been to his operation. I took a tour of it before I became involved in this. And it's about as good as you can do dairying. I would say that. But it's not good enough, which is, again, before I became an activist.
We're not talking about individual private companies. So we just want to say, and thank you for saying that that company is operating, as you say.
It's as good as,
yeah.
It's as good as can be, but still, you're taking the milk away from the mom.
Because we know what it does to the environment. So, okay, we'll go from that point. Go ahead.
I understand about liability. And again, I don't consider them the enemy. It's educate the population, the people, and they'll say, you know what, I'm going to eat less of that product. I don't feel good about it. It's not an essential product. Let's put it that way. Right. It's a luxury thing that tastes good for people, right? Because I was raised on it. My God, my bones are made of milk and meat. But now you wise up. There's a lot more people on the planet. We're consuming a huge amount of this stuff. We're exporting the Western diet to other parts of the world. And the planet, in our current use of resources, cannot sustain the amount of meat and milk we're consuming. It's just simple. I mean, you don't, as I tell the layman, which pisses off the vegan community, you don't have to go vegan. You don't have to go 100% and be perfect. Just eat less of it. Eat like your grandma said, eat more vegetables.
And that would give companies a time to segue into other business models, which are opportunities for them. And we're not against commerce. We're not against business people, small business, medium. That's what makes up the country. But we would love to see them segue. A lot of this is happening in different venues. And what happens generally, I don't want to take away from the subject, is the individuals involved and their businesses are better off from the transition. So that's what we're hoping for. Okay, so go from there. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, no, I want to reinforce what you said. It's Miyoko Shinner of Miyoko's Vegan. I mean, she was the first businesswoman who's doing a successful vegan business, saying she'll help any ranch. So there's people, I think Rowdy Rancher also, anybody who wants to transition out of a business that's the market share is dying, is dwindling, is diminishing, and move into a growth industry, which is, more plant-based foods. Well, fantastic. More money, make business, but do a product that's growing in popularity and also, by the way, is good for the planet.
Right. And as you said before, if people were to transition, you're not asking everyone to be perfect. That's another thing. But if people move that way and quickly, because we do need them to move quickly. I have some of the phone numbers to call. I want to run that at the bottom of the screen. But I saw the list. There were some that may have transitioned to different positions. So we'll get that updated. But there will be links at the top to take action. That's the most important thing. Let's keep going on. What I would like to keep going on is where it is now, or let's put it this way, how you went from where you were when you were doing all these stunts to where you are now. Can you go in that direction a little bit?
I like to think of them as actions, Lindsey, instead of
Actions. I mean,
I'm teasing.
publicity stunts too, because you needed the publicity and you utilized your skills to bring people's attention. Yeah, and you could talk a little bit too about how many people were involved and, you know, how they were on the media and all that.
So let me just say one. I'm going to back up one note. Just the two general points, if we're halfway through the interview, is the ranchers were paid to leave and they didn't. I mean, that's just a fact, and we can get into the details of it. The other is the ranches, the beef and dairy ranches inside Point Reyes National Seashore are its major source of pollution, land degradation, water contamination, and of course, with the methane from about now 4,500 cows in the park, greenhouse gas emissions. So say what you want about those factors outside the park, but that should not be what a national park is for. A private business, which is the major polluter in the national seashore, open to the public. And they also, third factor, have taken over a third of the entire park. 71,000 acres is Point Reyes National Seashore set aside for the public, and a third of that land, 28,000 acres, is given over to these ranches that lease the land and fence it off with barbed wire and such to the public. So where's the sense in that? I mean, just that alone. And those are three factors in a row. Each of them alone is enough to say, what the heck? How did they get in there? How are they grandfathered in? And they will say they're historic and they should be there, but they will not deal with those three factual points I've raised.
Wow, that's incredible. And it really is a disservice to the public for the park services to talk a little bit, like starting from the pushback you got there when you brought in the water the first time and they were still dying of thirst. How did you segue through? You did about 4 times, right? Can you go from one to the other on that?
When there was a drought during the pandemic and wildfires were running through California, the elk pond was dramatically low, and it was very easy for the public to understand. Dying elk, here we have pictures of dead elk, dying elk, rotting corpses, empty pond, looks like Death Valley. We're going to bring in water, which you're not allowed to do. That's unauthorized. But it was a very clear message to the public. So as an activist, we're constantly talking about what to do that gets attention, that is kind of at the edge of what's allowable or legal, always peaceful, always nonviolent. I mean, I was 21 years old when I saw the movie Gandhi with, of course, a white man, Ben Kingsley, playing the Indian man, right? But that really changed me. That really reached me on a deep level, understanding you do an action like Martin Luther King marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. He's just going to walk across a bridge. But of course, you know, they said, the cops, the police down there said, no, you can't do that. Well, so is that illegal to do? Technically. But it's just a nonviolent action, walking across a bridge, knowing it would elicit a response. And then you'd see the injustice that's quietly going on behind the scenes writ large. So in our case, it was bring water to the starving elk and the dying of thirst, mainly, more than just the lack of food from the drought. And then that got a lot of media attention. It was a story people could easily understand. So again, as an activist, we're constantly strategizing. By the way, shout out to Kara Gardner of Heartland Healing Arts for putting up with media activists, always doing this stuff and not being available to our relationship so much. And hi, Lynn. Thanks. Just seeing people watching, it's great.
That's so nice. But, you know, the one thing we did not do, and we probably should do, is get a little deeper into exactly what the proposal, you know, is. And we've got, you know, we still have more time.
Oh, that's great. Leave that up. That's so great. Thank you, Lindsey. That's awesome. So look at this, guys. This is how an activist learns about something. The third paragraph in this press release issued on June 9th, a Friday at 11 a.m. by the Park Service. Based on the review of public comments and internal scoping, whatever that means, NPS has identified a proposed action for the Tamales Plenary Plans, blah, blah, blah. Here it is, folks, the magic sentence. The proposed action would include removal of the Tule Elk fence and temporary water systems installed during the most recent drought. That was in there in a one-page document, which even the CBS reporter I spoke with about this, I sent him this and he said, where does it say it's going to take out the water? Where does it say it's going to remove the fence and take out the water? So that's how crazy it is. Like, you have to read these documents, and this is a short one to understand, like, what? Wait, what? my gosh, this is incredible. And we actually had big discussions that weekend. They did it on a Friday, as one does when it doesn't want to have an outing of the information. And we were all like, is this for real? Is this a gambit? Do they mean it? And then I can talk about, I just wanted to say the reaction first was like shock, excitement, but always with reservation. How would they reverse a policy like that?
And then did two newspapers also bring out the story?
Yeah. So, I mean,
the same one. This is
the Marin Independent Journal, the Point Reyes Light, finally the San Francisco Chronicle jumped in on this story because people care about the elk out there. I mean, it's hard to get people to care about, pollution because that's such a general topic. Or cows pollute. How does that make sense? I don't understand. But elk dying in a national park, who can be not upset by that? A hunter would say, well, they shouldn't be starved to death inside a fenced compound in a park. Breed them and then I want to go hunt them somewhere else. But no one is for starving out elk in a fenced compound. It's not done in zoos, right?
And so do you think that the fact that this message got out, are they concerned about it? Do you think they're serious about this? Because,
that's exactly. Are they serious and why? Right? Those are the questions.
Yeah.
So in discussions with a lot of, I am one of many. I like to run my mouth because I was taught to do it by my mom back in New York. But there are so many people who've been working on this. A retired Park Service attorney named Jim. I don't know what he wants me to use his last name. Julie Phillips, Tule Elk biologist, who's been so helpful in teaching me stuff, and Laura Cunningham, Western Watersheds Project, who's involved in one of the 2 lawsuits, and she can't talk because of that. But so many people have taught me so much, and many more names. I'm not going to list them all.
And Harvard Law. Do you want to mention?
And Harvard. There are 2 lawsuits. We can talk about the lawsuits, but to come back around.
Yeah, we'll come back to them, but there are 2, and you want to just give a shout out is all you're giving there.
Yeah, thank you. And what was your original? Oh, that's right. Yeah. Is this for real? So the talk is, yes, it's for real. The Park Service is a bureaucracy. They don't play games in that respect. If they make an announcement, which they have here, and then Laura Cunningham taught me that this is NEPA language, which is NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act language. This is a notice of a proposed action, a NOPA, with the acronym craziness here, NOPA. So this is actually a proposed action. And as I frame it, it's the first time in 45 years since the elk were brought in and the reserve was built by creating that famous 3-mile-long, 8-foot-tall fence that the Park Service has singularly proposed. We propose removing the fence. And now there's a public comment period. It's a year-plus long process. Nothing's going to happen for the next 12 months. Except that we will weigh in and bring the public with us as activists. Please, folks, please, we need you more than ever. We're winning this fight. Activism works. And as to the why this proposal, many reasons, including public pressure, media pressure from public pressure. This has been an embarrassment for the Park Service. I've heard more than one person in the know say that. They don't want terrible headlines saying they're killing animals in a national park unit, and especially in the Progressive Bay Area. It's embarrassing for them. And then, of course, the ranchers themselves are struggling financially. One rancher there, no names, removed many of his cows, hundreds of them, because he's drained the water table. He's fighting an uphill battle. His kids don't want the business. And as you were saying, and we were discussing, dairy, at least here, is on the way out unless they export their milk somewhere else, but you don't need to raise it off the land here. There's more drought. Costs are going up. Milk consumption is going down. And then even there was talk from activists in the know, no names, that this actually may have come from the White House. The White House, who is above the Department of Interior, which is above the Park Service, just like make this go away, which was not going to happen during the Trump administration, but it can come down as a directive from the White House, the Biden-Harris administration, saying, what's going on here? Can we at least take down the fence and have the elk not die? They didn't touch the ranches issue. And that's the next conversation we can have in a few minutes. Like, well, what effect will it have when you take down the fence and the elk are free to go? Will it, as that rancher, I won't mention his name again, was saying, hey, this means the end of our businesses? Well, not really. Your businesses are slowly fading anyway for a bunch of reasons. But the elk and cows can technically... I'm sorry?
This could be a good kickstart for the business to go elsewhere, right? To go in a different direction.
Well, we'd hope. I wouldn't tell a man how to run his business. I would suggest, like, why are you Now you're killing yourself trying to keep this alive when public sentiment around here anyway is turning against you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And organic, the other thing is just, I'll throw it out there as a factoid. Organic dairying, hey, that's wonderful. I only eat local small organic. Same amount of methane, same amount of cow manure, same abuse to the animals, which is capturing them, containing them, and taking the milk away. And you do that by taking the babies away from the mom cows. So that goes on whether it's organic or not.
Absolutely. And not to mention how it is destroying the environment, completely taking it down. And we don't have that much more time. So people have to transition their diet. Jack, what did we not cover? I did want to mention about your events coming up and let you talk a little bit about Tree Spirit Project and then still give you some time to wrap up with the Thule. So let's just go through what you have coming up. I think you said you have an event coming up too, right?
So I have an event with Indefensive Animals.
Right, separate from your own thing.
We just set the date on that. But anyway, if you go to Indefensive Animals, idausa.org, and sign up for emails, you'll be notified of events. But we're having a Tule Elk town hall, virtual, of course, because that's the world often, not always. And I'm going to get to that too. The problem with everything being virtual. But we're having a virtual town hall on July 20th at 1 p.m. Pacific. So I'll be there doing this with people, but also I want to make at least half of it interactive and take questions. I love doing that because, I'm old. I'm over 35 and I actually like interacting with fellow human beings, as terrifying as that is. And then you also asked about, for my Tree Spirit Project, the way I maintain my sanity as an activist. And I asked my girlfriend, Kara, about this, but you're just constantly, fighting the man and beating your head against it. And it can be really depressing. And I know you know all about this. One of the ways I recover is to go out into nature. So in this case also, thank you. I'm leading something September 28th through October 1st. This is my own trip called the Giant Coast Redwoods Experience. And actually that guy on that tree in that little picture there is yours truly. And not everybody who comes on the trip has to be as major a tree hugger as me. Few would be, although, of course, tree huggers are attracted, and I am an unabashed one. But it's the value of being away from all of this, the mix, the hubbub, social media, our phones, computers, laptops, always working, always doing, and just being among those giant, ancient trees for hours and for days. And in quiet, it's Thursday night through a Sunday night. And it's a chance for people to be away from their, any vacation can do that, but this one is specifically designed to have people's internal clock springs unwind and slow down. I mean, I would say as this will be amusing to fellow tree huggers and strange to people who think we're crazy tree huggers. Have you ever held onto a giant tree that's over 1,000 years old and just breathe and relax? I do it barefoot, ideally, and just be there with your eyes closed for 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
20 minutes. I mean, even people who like to do that, including myself, don't take the time to do it every day.
Right.
And,
it sounds like heaven, Jack.
Well, thank you. I like to think so. It's heaven on earth and it's available and it's right there. It's available.
So they can go to your website here. And we'll put that link there too. And I think people need this desperately. I think people need self-care. And this is going to be something. Can you tell us just a little bit more, a sneak preview of what's going to go on there? Oh, it's really easy. Just come to the website. It's treespiritproject.com and then /events. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's just, thank you for this. It's such a challenge for me. People see me in my activist role and I'm wound up and talking a mile a minute, like in that interview for CBS, because, it's crafting a soundbite and fitting it in so they don't have a cut points. They can't edit it out. But then you come off rushed and harried, but that's high energy. This trip is the opposite of that. I actually do have another gear in me, again, where it's just slower, less talking, quieter, deeper, more heartfelt, more connected to other living organisms. And around those trees, it's just so easy. I mean, my father, who was a city guy, oddly enough, my mother was a nature lover, to be sure, out of Brooklyn. My father was a city guy, very happy, bunkered into his Manhattan apartment, as I say, with the shades drawn and the air conditioning blasting. I got him into Muir Woods, which is, it's a nice place, but a lot of people go there. 1 million people go through there every year. And even he, a city guy, very happy in a city, looked at those trees and he looked up and, wow. Alfred Gescheidt, the original madman, he was awed by those trees. That's the power of those things. Even a city guy feels them. You feel them. So when you go with a small group of people who love those trees, you can go really deep, really fast, really far, and it feels really good.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter whether you feel like you actually communicate with the trees. It is factual that trees communicate with themselves underground, and they do send signals, etc. So why not to humans? But you don't have to worry about that. It would be such an amazing trip, and everybody needs it. And that gives you the time you need to come up with ideas where you can change the world. Really, we all can. And that's the point of the show. Like, how can we help? So in your situation here, how can we help? What would be the best action for people to take?
Thank you for asking. I would say sign up for email so we can notify you. And, we don't harangue you with stuff, but, and that's both to idausa.org/elk to get to the elk issue and sign up there and say, yes, you'd like to be notified. mytreespiritproject.com/elk or anywhere on treespiritproject.com, sign up for email. And then you'll be notified of the upcoming Tule Elk Town Hall, sponsored by In Defense of Animals on Thursday, July 20th at 1 p.m. And then also there's going to be a public comment period from the National Park Service later this summer. We don't know when that is. It could be next week. It could be in 2 months. But when that is announced, we will be ready to then reach out to all people on our lists and say, okay, now's the time. Pull the ripcord and make your public comment. We want 10,000 comments to flood into the Park Service. So they have popular support, public support for yes, despite whatever the ranchers squawk about, oh, it's going to hurt our business. You have no business.
That's what they need, right? That's what people forget. That's what they need. And that's what a lot of people, activists and others that think that politicians need to do their job is we do have to recognize that there are opposing sides and they're supposed to represent all the people. So you need public support. That's the most important thing.
And public participation and voting, as with the recent Supreme Court decisions, there's a lot of talk about, you see, it does make a difference who's elected. And it's so easy to be cynical, and it's self-defeating and self-perpetuating. If, it doesn't make a difference, I'm not going to do anything, then so shall it be. No one participates. I mean, this country is very, I think, progressive in many of its views socially. You just have to come out and let your voice be heard, even with some of the odds stacked against us. I don't want to get into politics here, but if people participate, things will be better. Absolutely. And the majority of this country doesn't want elk to be fenced and die in a national park. And they're not for destroying, the ecosystem for those of us who, believe in science, which again is the majority. The rest of it is just, it's capitalism and money polluting a system, as we all know.
And they just have to take a bigger step towards the future for everyone, including their own children. So yeah, I think we covered just about everything that I wanted to cover with you, but we have a few more minutes. If there's anything you feel you want to add that we did not cover.
Well, I just want to wrap it up by saying activism works. The public participating works. This is a reversal of 45 years of federal National Park Service policy. The fence stays, the elk will stay there. We're going to manage them by letting them die in a fenced compound. We're going to manage them with guns. All of that is now on the edge of changing. The first step in a process because of activism, because the community got involved, activists got involved, organizations like In Defense of Animals got involved.
We didn't mention that since the 10-year span, there were over 400 elk that have died under this system.
Over 475, about 478 by the Park Service's own count. And that's a tricky thing, how many died, but basically their management plan is keeping them fenced and then they die in the zoo. So it's like saying, we're going to only put out this much water for this many animals in a zoo compound. And if they die, well, it's natural. It's completely absurd and just so offensive that that's in a national park. So finally,
Go
when
ahead.
people participate, they compliment the National Park Service. Good job. Yes, move in this direction. Give them a carrot after all the sticks we've been giving them.
Well, it's a step in the right direction. You've got a lot of support here. You've got viewers that have been commenting. Tom says you can get political. I'm trying to stay off that, but it's true. People each have to get political and voice their opinion.
Take down the death wall for the voiceless victims. There's one. Thanks, Katie. I forget my audience here. Like, I'm not going too far out front.
Well, we're hoping that we do reach others, and that's why we want to, elaborate. When I know a lot of you want to get to the meat of it, but I do like to keep it broad because people don't understand, and maybe just mention how critical it is to the health of the environment, because I know that's what brought you this direction, and that's what Tree Spirit Project really, that's the focus of your organization. I know you have activism, you have your organization, your livelihood. So talk a little bit about why it's so important to the environment.
Well, I would say even the word environment, I'm very much a student of communication and what words to use to convince people. And it depends on the audience and the strategy and the goals and all that stuff. Here's the deal. Here's my humble Jack's overview. It's the Tree Spirit Project. It's Jack. We have become disconnected from the natural world. And that is the source of so much pain and suffering and confusion. And that's why we, humanity, have done to the planet what we've done to it, what we're doing to it. We're destroying our own life support system. It doesn't make any logical sense, but we've set up these systems, and then we are creatures of habit. We humans, is what it is. We can change our habits. I changed 50 years of meat eating and to become someone who doesn't eat those products anymore. And I feel fine. It's the pain, the effort, the struggle of transition, but there's so many people moving in that direction now. You can find community and support and open your heart. I mean, to connect with trees, to connect with the cow in the field, the mother cow in the field who wants to keep her baby. We're breeding them just to use them. It's just, all this stuff is obvious. And I try, it's so easy to get angry and strident, but I like to think, I'm not speaking to my fellow vegans. They're already there. And perhaps to have them sing in the chorus louder, as we say. But to people who are, on the fence, or I don't know, or it's too tough, it's not hard. You'll be glad you did. You'll feel better. Right?
It's great life. It makes you happy. And when you lay your head down on the pillow, you don't have, you have no guilt about it. I didn't take a life. There was no suffering, deliberate suffering. We all, nobody's perfect, but I did no harm to the best of my ability. And in fact, I'm trying to make the world a better place. I mean,
as they say in 12,
brings the most happiness, don't you?
Absolutely. And in 12 step, they call it progress, not perfection. Just make progress, and movement in a positive direction makes you feel better. I mean, yeah, of course.
Absolutely. So go ahead.
No, I thank you for this platform to say all this stuff. I long for, I'm pre-pandemic, so I still long for interaction with human beings and have conversations. I'm seeing the comments, and it's great. People out there get it, of course, on this platform, which I thank you for, Lindsey, and to the Action Hour and to Jane Unchained. It's fabulous that thousands and thousands of people get it.
Thank you. And we want to just mention it is called Unchained TV. A lot of people still say that. We want everybody to know it's Unchained TV, and it's a free streaming network, and you can download it. It's always free. And we have all sorts of programming. We have talk shows like this, but we also have documentaries, award-winning documentaries. We have comedy shows. We have music shows. We have cooking shows. And we would love people to download the app. And this particular broadcast will be available. Right now it's in the top carousel, but it will be available under Action Hour on Unchained TV. I'll flash it one more time for you guys. Yeah, so Jack, thanks so much for being on today. You were very enlightening as usual and inspiring. And I think you're amazing. what you do. We didn't get into your music. You wrote a song, you do all sorts of things, and we'll have to have you back on again to talk about activism. Like, I love doing shows where people talk about their whole development as activists and how they utilize it. We cut into that a little bit, but of course we want to focus on the Tule Elk, and we do want people to take action on that.
Can I do a 30-second teaser about music and song?
You have, sure, go ahead.
No, I just it gives me I'm a creative person, an artist, whatever those labels mean, and I just need to, rather than like doing the form and the Park Service and all that, it's so rigid, and I just need to play and go nuts and go wild. So I've been taking existing pop songs, a la Randy Rainbow and 50 years before him, Tom Lehrer, and writing lyrics for environmental activist causes. So, for instance, they want to drop rat poison in the Farallon Islands to kill thousands of mice, which is just horrific. In a national marine sanctuary, right? Get that, because they're invasive, which is nonsense. They've been there 150 years. They're part of the food chain. So I took the song, "A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down," and changed the lyrics to, "A spoonful of poison keeps the population down." Ooh. And I found an incredible soprano singer, Phoebe, to sing it with new lyrics. And she does an impersonation of Julie Andrews. And it's just, I played it for somebody without warning, and they were confused. They don't know what is this? Those words are so, what are they?
Gosh.
And it's the power of music and humor for environmentalist causes.
Yeah.
Super, super powerful. So I'd love to do a whole show just on all the different songs for the Point Reyes Elk, for the Farallons, and so on. It's great fun.
That would be great. Do you have videos to go or visuals to go so we can show while we play the music?
Some of them. That actually is the much harder part to do. I mean, they're really ideal for podcasts and stuff, but what I would do is I'm a photographer, show slides of the images. The songs and the music.
Great. Well, I think our viewers would love to see that, and I would love to have you come back on and do it. Yeah, I think I've shown, there's a few more.
I don't understand that comment.
You were the eco-fascism angle, though. Oh, I guess somebody doesn't agree. Eco-fascism. Interesting. Well, we have another one. Thank you, Jack. And we have another one saying, "Go vegan now."
Tom's on it. Don't end the stream. This is so positive.
We don't want to get negative about fascism or anything like that.
No, he's just saying don't end the show. He's saying don't end the show. This is so great. Dominion movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Dominion. Yeah. Oh my God. Dominion. Geez, what a film. That's the other thing too, is you just want to get a friend like, I don't know, Jack, and what about this? And what about, they push back on the whole thing and say, tell you what, I will never talk to you again about any of it. Just watch Dominion. Just 90 minutes of your time, just watch that, and I'll never bug you again. And just their mind and their heart, their mind will get blown and their heart will burst.
And then they'll have to go on retreat after they watch it. So it's important for everyone to see it. Okay, well, we have to end now. We're going past our time. So thank you for being on, Jack. As always, it's a pleasure. I'd love to have you on again to talk about updates, because we want to stay up on the Tule Elk, but also a show about activism. We could do both. So keep us posted, and go ahead. Last word.
Thank you, Lindsay. And thank you again to Kara of Heartland Healing Arts for putting up with a partner who's constantly doing this stuff on a Saturday of a 4-day weekend. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Bye-bye.